May 7th, 1945. The war is basically over. Germany is collapsing, Hitler is dead, white flags are everywhere. But inside Third Army headquarters, something happens that makes hardened generals stop breathing for a second. A young American captain bursts into the room, pale, shaking, out of breath. "Sir, the Germans are surrendering." Relief. Finally. Then he adds the sentence that shouldn't exist in any war. "But they refuse to surrender to us." Silence. They say they'll only surrender to one man, General George S. Patton. Not a unit, not an army, not even America. One man. German soldiers, trained, disciplined, and armed, are walking past British lines, past other American units, marching through days through chaos and rubble, just to reach one army, Patton's army. Some refuse to drop their weapons, some sit down in fields and wait. Some say they would rather die than surrender to anyone else. Why? Why would defeated enemy soldiers choose who they surrender to? Why would thousands risk being shot just to meet one general? The answer isn't mercy, it isn't fear. It's something far rarer at the end of a brutal war: respect. And what happens next breaks every rule of warfare and turns Patton into a legend even his enemies believed in.
May 7th, 1945, Southern Germany. For most soldiers, the war already feels finished. Gunfire has slowed, artillery is silent, white flags hang from broken windows. Entire German units are melting away, surrendering to whoever they meet first. This is how wars usually end, but not in General George S. Patton's Third Army. At a forward command post near Regensburg, American soldiers spot movement through the early morning fog. At first, they think it's refugees. Civilians are everywhere now, starving, scared, desperate. Then the binoculars come up. Not civilians, soldiers. Hundreds of them. German soldiers. They're moving in formation, not running, not hiding, no chaos. Rifles slung neatly over shoulders, officers walking calmly at the front. A white flag flutters above them, but something feels wrong. This doesn't look like defeat. An American sergeant raises his hand. "Halt! Drop your weapons!" The German column stops. Their officer steps forward, young, clean uniform, calm eyes. "We wish to surrender," he says in careful English. The sergeant exhales. Finally. "Good choice. Weapons on the ground, hands up." The German officer doesn't move. "We surrender to General Patton." The sergeant blinks. "What?" "We surrender to Patton. Where is he?" The air changes instantly. "You're surrendering to the United States Army," the sergeant snaps. "Drop your weapons now." The German officer shakes his head, slow, respectful, unmovable. "No, we surrender to Patton, only Patton." American rifles come up. "You've got 5 seconds before this turns ugly." The German officer looks back at his men. They don't flinch, no panic, no fear. "We walked 15 kilometers to reach Third Army lines," the officer says quietly. "We passed British positions. We passed other American units. We did not surrender to them." "Why?" the sergeant demands. "Because they are not Patton." Silence. The sergeant radios his lieutenant. The lieutenant arrives, irritated. Same conversation, same result. The Germans won't drop their weapons. They won't move. They sit down in the open field, stack their rifles neatly beside them, and wait for one man. Within an hour, the report travels upward, company level, battalion level, division level, until it lands on a desk inside Third Army. A German company refusing to surrender, demanding Patton by name. At headquarters, officers stare at the report. "This isn't how surrender works," one mutters. Another adds, "Enemy soldiers don't get to choose." But this is only the beginning. Before noon, another message arrives, then another. A company in the morning, a regiment in the afternoon. Different locations, same demand. We surrender to Patton, not to anyone else. Some German units even walk past American soldiers trying to accept their surrender, asking the same question again and again. Is this Patton's army? By evening, the situation is no longer strange, it's disturbing. Because something is spreading through the collapsing German forces. Not fear, not desperation, but a deliberate choice. And the name on everyone's lips is the same: George S. Patton.
May 7, 1945. Morning. By now, Third Army officers are scratching their heads. Why would German soldiers, beaten and exhausted, march past any other option, British, other American units, and specifically insist on Patton? To understand this, you need to step back. General George S. Patton wasn't just another American general. He was a storm, a whirlwind, a living legend. Even German intelligence had files thicker than any soldier's rucksack. They tracked him relentlessly: North Africa, Sicily, France, and everywhere he went, chaos followed for the enemy. Reports read like a horror story for German officers. Most dangerous American commander, aggressive, unpredictable, capable of advances thought impossible. If engagement is unavoidable, expect unconventional tactics and rapid maneuvering. Soldiers call him Der blutige Patton, Bloody Patton. Not because he was cruel to prisoners, far from it, but because he tore through German formations like a hurricane, relentless and precise. He led from the front, demanded discipline, expected honor, treated captured officers with professional courtesy. And somehow, German soldiers, especially career officers, understood him better than some Americans did. A young German captain who had faced Patton wrote later, "He fights like a Prussian, aggressive, disciplined, personally brave. We respect that." This wasn't intimidation, this was mutual understanding. By May 1945, as Germany crumbled, these same soldiers faced a choice: surrender to anyone or surrender to someone worthy. And Patton represented something rare at the end of total collapse: honor. So when units like the company near Linz, Austria, approached American lines, their choice wasn't fear, it wasn't coercion, it was deliberate, calculated, respectful. We surrender to Patton, only to Patton, not to America, not to other Americans, to Patton. Imagine being the American officer on the ground hearing this. The logical response: confusion, panic. Do I shoot? Do I arrest? Or just wait? And Patton? When told about these units, he laughed. Well, I'll be damned. Even the Germans have standards. The first incident sets the tone. May 5, 1945, Linz, Austria. A German company of about 150 men is spotted carrying a white flag. Weapons slung, not a hint of hostility. Officers walk at the front, soldiers behind them, disciplined, neat, orderly. The American patrol intercepts them. The captain raises his hands but keeps his rifle over his shoulder. We surrender to General Patton. Where is he? The American sergeant tries to argue logic. You surrender to the United States Army, weapons down. The German officer shakes his head, calm but firm. We walked 15 kilometers to reach Third Army lines. We passed British units. We passed other American units. We surrender to Patton, only Patton. That is our choice. Incredible. After hours of back and forth, a compromise. Patton himself isn't physically there, but he sends word. He accepts their surrender on behalf of the United States. Officers may keep sidearms until formal processing. The German captain considers, nods, and lays down his rifle. Recorded, surrendered to Patton, he says. The story spreads like wildfire.
May 6, 1945, Bavaria.
Word is spreading. Not rumors, not whispers, actual reports. German units are refusing to surrender to anyone except Patton. By now, Third Army officers have begun to question reality. Soldiers don't get to pick their captor, yet here they are, disciplined, armed, making a choice that defies every law of war. One regiment, roughly 2,000 men, approaches the Third Army lines. They're organized, still armed, not ragged, not desperate, not terrified. They're choosing this, choosing Patton. A colonel at their head asks to speak with the senior American officer on the scene. A major arrives. "I'm Major Reynolds. You're surrendering?" "Yes, to General Patton," the colonel replies. "He's 30 miles away. We don't have time to wait." "Then we will wait," the colonel says, firm, calm, commanding. "We will not surrender to junior officers. We are a combat regiment. We have fought 5 years. We deserve to surrender to a worthy opponent." And wait they do. Entire regiment, weapons stacked neatly, in open fields, for hours, for a day, unshaken, respectful, disciplined. The Americans don't know whether to laugh, cry, or salute. Major Reynolds radios Third Army HQ. "Sir, we have a regiment sitting in a field. They refuse to surrender to anyone but Patton. They'll wait as long as it takes." Silence on the other end, then a chuckle. "Tell them I accept their surrender on my behalf. Officers may keep their sidearms. Treat them with respect." The message is relayed. German colonel receives it. He salutes, even though Patton is miles away. Orders his men, weapons down, surrender accepted, honorable. It's unprecedented, unbelievable, surreal. Within hours, multiple other regiments, battalions, and companies arrive at Third Army lines. Some having walked for days, passing British and other American units. Some insisting, "Is this Patton's army? Will he accept our surrender?" It's no longer a pattern, it's a movement. The word spreads like wildfire through collapsing German forces. Patton treats soldiers with respect. He fights with honor. He is a worthy opponent. By the end of the day, Third Army is overwhelmed. Thousands of prisoners pouring in, not desperate, not panicked, choosing surrender, based solely on the name at the top of the chain. This is how legends are built. Not with bullets, not with speeches, not with propaganda, but with actions that echo respect, discipline, and courage, even in the face of total defeat.
May 7th, 1945, Germany. The battlefield is quiet. The war is practically over. And yet, chaos erupts in Third Army headquarters, not from gunfire, but from logic being shredded. A battalion of 800 German soldiers sits outside the American lines, calm, disciplined, armed, waiting, not surrendering unless Patton himself shows up. An aide bursts into the operations room. "Sir, we have a situation. They refuse to surrender to anyone but Patton." The generals exchange looks, faces pale, mouths dry. They've read reports. They've seen strange things over the last 48 hours. But this defies every rule of warfare. Patton, informed, barely hides a grin. "Fine, I'll handle this personally. Let's see what these soldiers know about honor." He drives out in his jeep, boots crunching over gravel, sun glinting off his helmet. The battalion commander snaps to attention as he approaches. "I'm General Patton. I understand you want to surrender to me." "Yes, sir," the German major replies, standing tall. "We will surrender, but only to a worthy opponent. We trust you to treat us correctly." Patton studies the man, nods, salutes. The battalion mirrors him, 800 rifles stacked neatly in synchronized precision. Silence, thick enough to choke on. "You fought well," Patton says. You surrender because the war is over, not because you were defeated. That is honorable. Your men will be treated according to Geneva Convention. Officers may retain sidearms until processing. You have my word. The German major's eyes glisten. He turns to his men. Weapons down. We surrender honorably. To Patton. The American soldiers watching can hardly believe it. Did that just happen? Mutters a corporal. He saluted them. All of them. 800? Patton's answer is simple. They're soldiers. They fought. That makes a difference. Word spreads like fire through collapsing German forces. Patton accepts surrender. Honorably, fairly, personally. By evening, more units start marching in, passing other Allied lines, passing anyone who could process their surrender faster. But they only want one name on the record: Patton. And with that, the legend grows. Not by fear, not by terror, but by respect, by acknowledging soldiers as soldiers, even after years of war, destruction, and chaos. In the final hours of Europe's bloodiest conflict, one man's reputation reshapes surrender itself.
May 7th to 8th, 1945, Southern Germany. By now, the word is out. Patton accepts surrender personally, honorably, properly, and suddenly Third Army lines are overwhelmed. What started as trickles, a company here, a battalion there, is now a flood. Entire regiments, even some division-sized units. Soldiers are marching for hours, sometimes days, through rubble, mud, and broken roads, bypassing British positions, bypassing other American units, all to surrender specifically to Patton. Some units walk in with minimal supplies. Some have gone without food for days. Some are exhausted beyond imagination, but all maintain discipline. All demand one thing: their surrender be acknowledged by the man himself. An American intelligence officer watches them stream in and mutters, "This is insane. They actually choose who they surrender to?" But the soldiers aren't making this choice lightly. They've fought 5 years, maybe more. They've killed, survived, seen comrades fall, cities burn, families displaced, and now in the final hours they make one deliberate decision: to surrender with dignity to someone who understands war, not politics, not ideology, but war itself. One German sergeant explains to an American interrogator, "We could have surrendered to the British, we were closer. We could have surrendered to other Americans, but we walked 3 extra days because we heard Patton respects professional soldiers. We wanted to surrender to someone who understands honor." The scale is staggering. Thousands of soldiers now moving westward, converging on Third Army positions. Camps are overwhelmed, supplies strained. Officers and logistics teams are scrambling to process men they haven't even seen coming. Patton's response is characteristically blunt. "I don't care if the supply officer says we're running low on food. These men surrendered honorably. Treat them as soldiers, not animals. They fought. That's enough." The contrast is stark. Other Allied armies receive surrendering troops without fanfare, but here every soldier is a story, a history, a choice. They're not cogs in a machine, they're human beings reclaiming the last bit of dignity the war hasn't taken. Even as officers grumble about paperwork, Patton's logic is simple. Every soldier who surrenders without a fight saves American lives. Every soldier who sees respect in surrendering becomes a story, a legend, a reason other Germans will lay down arms without unnecessary bloodshed. By evening, the flood becomes a torrent. More soldiers arrive than Third Army can process. Yet, despite exhaustion and chaos, discipline remains. Soldiers stack rifles neatly, wait patiently, obey orders. They know somehow this is different. This is Patton's army, and surrender here isn't just the end of a fight, it's a choice, a calculated, honorable choice. In these final hours, surrender becomes not just a military action, but a statement. Even in total defeat, soldiers deserve respect.
May 7th and 8th, 1945, Germany. Not every German soldier wanted to surrender to Patton. Among the chaos, one group stood apart, the SS, units notorious for war crimes, brutality, and ideology, who feared American capture as much as they feared justice. Intelligence officers at 3rd Army HQ had been briefed. Any SS personnel trying to blend in with surrendered Wehrmacht units must be screened. Patton's orders were explicit. Separate them. Document everything. They will face justice. This was not cruelty. This was principle. Regular soldiers did their duty. SS criminals committed atrocities. Patton knew the difference, and German units noticed. Meanwhile, smaller Wehrmacht groups continued their deliberate march to 3rd Army lines. They knew that surrendering here meant dignity, not humiliation. Officers retained sidearms until processing. Soldiers received food, water, medical care. They were treated as warriors, not criminals. A German captain explained later, "We could have surrendered to other units, closer, faster. But Patton understands what it means to fight honorably. We wanted that respect. Even after defeat, that mattered more than life itself." Patton told his staff bluntly, "I'm not fighting the soldiers, I'm fighting the Nazi regime. If they fought honorably for their country, they deserve respect. If they were SS or Gestapo, we deal with them separately, simple as that." This distinction became legendary. News traveled fast among German ranks. Patton treats professional soldiers with honor, distinguishes criminals from warriors, and rewards discipline with dignity. Even officers who had resisted surrender for weeks finally marched toward 3rd Army. They bypassed other units, endured days of travel, crossed rivers and destroyed roads, all to surrender specifically to Patton. It wasn't fear that drove them west. It wasn't desperation. It was a conscious decision to surrender to someone who would recognize our professionalism, not punish us as enemies. By the end of the day, thousands more soldiers were in 3rd Army custody. The SS exception remained strictly monitored, but the principle spread. Surrender to Patton equals honor, humanity, and proper treatment. The war was ending, but in the 3rd Army's lines, respect was winning where bullets had failed.
May 8, 1945. V-Day. Germany has officially surrendered. The war in Europe is over. Yet inside a processing center run by 3rd Army, history lingers in the eyes of one man, a senior German colonel, career soldier, veteran of both world wars. He sits quietly, hands folded, thinking about the past 5 years, the battles fought, comrades lost, cities destroyed. American intelligence officers are interviewing captured officers. "Why did you surrender to 3rd Army specifically?" they ask. The colonel pauses, careful, thoughtful. "I fought Americans, British, Russians. I know how each treats prisoners," he begins. "Americans are generally fair. British are correct but cold. Russians we do not discuss." A soft sigh escapes him. But Patton's 3rd Army is different. He fights like a German would fight, aggressive, disciplined, honorable. He understands that soldiers doing their duty are not criminals. He respects courage. He respects discipline. He respects professionalism. The officer continues, "When a country collapses, when the army is defeated, when leaders are gone, the last thing left is your dignity. How you are treated matters more than anything else. Patton treats us as soldiers. That matters more than you can understand." Every word is measured. Each sentence carries the weight of experience, years of service, and the scars of war. Other officers nod silently, reflecting. Some add similar observations. "We surrendered to him because he is a warrior, not a bureaucrat, not a politician, a soldier." Across 3rd Army, American officers are still trying to process the flood of German prisoners. Not all understand the significance. One captain argues, frustrated, "Why care about making the enemy feel good? They're the enemy." Patton overhears. His tone is blunt, patient, and unforgettable. Those men could have fled east and surrendered to the Russians. They'd face Siberian labor camps or worse. Or they could have scattered, kept fighting. Instead, they chose to surrender honorably, to save lives. That choice is invaluable. Treat them with respect. The captain nods slowly. Understanding begins to dawn. Patton continues. They are professional soldiers. They fought for their country. Hatred is for the politicians. Respect is for warriors. There's a difference. The German colonel listens, eyes wet. His surrender wasn't just a procedural act. It was a deliberate acknowledgement that even enemies could honor one another. And in that room, on that day, the distinction becomes clear. Honor survives even in defeat.
May 1945, Eastern Germany. While surrendering to Patton was about honor, there was another, grimmer reason German soldiers risked days of travel to reach Third Army lines: the Soviets. Stories of what awaited those captured by the Red Army had circulated relentlessly through German ranks. Labor camps, executions, years of forced work in Siberia. Soldiers and officers alike feared these fates more than defeat itself. One German sergeant, exhausted after days of marching westward, explains to an American guard, "We ran from the Russians, days without sleep, no food, just running. We knew if they caught us." He stops, shaking his head. The implication is clear: horror, fear, survival. American officers watching these arriving units began to understand a harsh reality. Many soldiers weren't surrendering to Patton for respect alone. They were fleeing a far worse fate. Patton, aware of this, is blunt with his staff. These men aren't coming to us because they love Americans. They're fleeing the Soviets. And you know what? I don't blame them. If I had to choose between American captivity and Soviet captivity, I'd choose Americans every time. This understanding doesn't mean he tolerates lawlessness. Discipline and honor remain paramount. Soldiers are processed, treated according to Geneva Convention, and officers may retain sidearms until full processing. But there's a subtle psychological shift here. Fear of the Soviets intersects with respect for Patton. Thousands of soldiers are now making a conscious decision to surrender to someone who will not only respect them, but save their lives from a far crueler alternative. As Third Army units move deeper into German territory, this dynamic accelerates. Whole units arrive after days or even weeks. Refugees and surrendering soldiers intermingle. Some collapse from exhaustion, others keep pace out of determination, but all share one goal: Patton's army. Patton's staff begins to see a pattern. It's not just honor, it's survival, yes, but in choosing us over others, they also preserve dignity. And in these final days of war, this becomes the defining attribute of surrender: to choose where and to whom you yield, even in total defeat. In this context, Third Army is more than an army. It's a sanctuary of professional conduct, a safe landing point where the chaos of war meets discipline, respect, and humanity. The flood of surrendered German soldiers, motivated by both honor and fear, reshapes the final chapter of the European theater. It's a moment where strategy, psychology, and morality collide in a way rarely seen in warfare. May 8, 1945. Third Army Headquarters, Germany. V-Day. Germany has officially surrendered. The war in Europe is over. But for Patton and his men, there's still one last duty: to honor the soldiers who chose to surrender. Unlike other Allied armies, Patton insists on a formal surrender ceremony. Not for show, not for propaganda, but because he believes soldiers deserve dignity, even in defeat. German officers representing thousands of surrendered troops are assembled. Each face tells a story of years in the field, of battles fought, of comrades lost, of cities burned. Patton addresses them through a translator. "Gentlemen, the war is over. Germany has surrendered. You fought bravely for your country.
You are now prisoners of the United States Army. You will be treated according to Geneva Convention. You will be given food, shelter, and medical care. Eventually, you will be repatriated to Germany when conditions allow. You have my word." He pauses, looks each officer in the eye. "You are soldiers. You did your duty. Hatred is for the politicians who started this war. Respect is for warriors. Now the fighting is done." German officers salute. Patton returns the salute. Watching American officers are shocked. One whispers, "Sir, you just saluted enemy prisoners." Patton responds simply, "They are soldiers. I respect soldiers." Every step of the ceremony emphasizes honor, discipline, and humanity. Officers retain sidearms until full processing. Soldiers are treated with care. No cruelty, no humiliation. The ceremony sends a powerful message back to German ranks still in the field. Surrender to Patton is not surrender to cruelty. It is surrender to dignity. Even those who had resisted surrender for weeks now understand why units marched for days to reach Third Army lines. Respect is powerful. It changes behavior. It saves lives. In a way, this ceremony is more than symbolic. It's strategic. By treating surrendering troops humanely, Patton ensures smoother transitions, fewer holdouts, and faster end to hostilities. As the sun sets on May 8, 1945, thousands of soldiers and officers leave the ceremony with one thought in mind. Even in defeat, honor exists, and Patton preserves it. This final act of respect cements Patton's legacy, not just as a warrior, but as a man who understood that humanity and discipline could coexist with victory. The war may have ended, but the story of honorable surrender will echo for decades.
May-June 1945, Germany. The guns have fallen silent. Europe is a shattered mosaic of ruins, smoke, and memories. The Third Army faces one final massive challenge, processing tens of thousands of surrendered German soldiers. Logistics are insane. Food, shelter, medical care, security, repatriation planning. Yet Patton insists on maintaining standards. These men surrendered honorably. Treat them honorably, he says. Simple, non-negotiable. Supply officers complain. Paperwork explodes. Resources are stretched to the limit. Officers grumble about the chaos of handling so many men who chose surrender. Patton cuts them off. "We won the war. We can afford to be generous in victory. Every soldier we treat with respect is a life saved. Every soldier we insult risks rebellion, chaos, or death. Do your job." The soldiers notice. Word spreads back to Germany. Third Army treats prisoners well. Not just humanely, but with dignity. Those who surrendered specifically to Patton speak of it in whispers and letters. Years later, it shapes memories, attitudes, and the rebuilding of post-war Germany. One letter, forwarded through military channels, lands on Patton's desk in June 1945, written by a German colonel who surrendered in May. "General Patton, I expected harshness. We found fairness. I expected cruelty. We found respect. You treated us as soldiers, not criminals. You acknowledged our service even in defeat. You gave us dignity when we had nothing else. I fought against America for 5 years. By all rights, you should have treated me with contempt. Instead, you treated me with professional courtesy. America, through your leadership, showed that even enemies can respect each other. Thank you, General. You showed me that honor exists even in war." Patton reads the letter 3 times, files it in his personal papers, never responds. But he remembers. Historians later notice a remarkable pattern. An unusually large number of German soldiers surrendered to Third Army compared to other Allied armies. Why? Interviews reveal consistent themes. We heard he was honorable. We heard he treats soldiers with respect. We wanted to surrender to a warrior, not a bureaucrat. Patton's reputation transcended fear. It was a blend of devastating combat effectiveness and respect for professional soldiers. This combination reshaped surrender, morality, and behavior in the final days of the war. The war ended, but the story remains. Thousands of enemy soldiers chose who they surrendered to. They bypassed closer units, they walked for days, they risked their lives. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to preserve their dignity. And Patton? He honored that choice. Even in the most destructive war in human history, there was still respect. Warriors respecting warriors, discipline meeting compassion, victory balanced with humanity. Even the Germans have standards, Patton once joked. In May 1945, those words weren't a joke, they were truth. The legacy of the Third Army's final days is not just about strategy, tanks, or battles. It is about humanity amid chaos, honor amid defeat, and respect across enemy lines. A story of surrender, a story of dignity, a story of a general who understood that even in war, some things are worth fighting for beyond victory: respect, courage, and honor.